Hi everybody and welcome to the Property AI Report. This is your weekly digest of all things property and AI, brought to you by me, Mal McCallion, and my good friend and co-host, Matt Goddard. Matt, how are you?
Happy New Year, Mal. I'm great. How are you?
I am very, very, very good. Thank you. Very excited for 2026. Obviously, a lot coming this year, isn't it? I mean, we did a little review of last year, but yeah, already. And it's already the 5th of January. There is loads and loads and loads to get our teeth into, isn't there?
Straight out
So,
of blocks.
exactly. Without further ado, let's get stuck into our property news. All right. First up on the property news for 2026 is mortgages. So, news this morning, HSBC fires the starting gun on rate cuts for mortgages. So this is good news for the property industry very, very early on. In terms of, it seems that people are going to be more incentivized to move house than they were last year. So yeah, Matt, this feels like a positive moment, particularly in the middle of, under normal circumstances, a really, really busy January anyway.
Well, that's it. And there's a lot of options for obviously stock coming to the market. People having worked over the Christmas New Year period and getting those listings ready to go. And whether to sandbag them or not, there's the fact that buyers are now going to have more opportunity with the mortgages is sort of hopefully fanning the flames of a good start to the January market, right?
Yeah, are you a believer in the Boxing Day kind of boost and holding everything back until then as an ex-agent?
I know I used to get a lot of feature requests at Repeat that would come in once a year, normally around about November, where the account managers say, I've been asked about this particular feature to launch property on Boxing Day. And funnily enough, one of the first things when I was reviewing the Listing Logic social media platform, they had the ability to schedule your campaigns to run on given dates. So I know it's still it's a thing in agency, and some users got around it just by logging in on Boxing Day and setting the listings to live and going through that approach. So it's certainly something that still happens. And I not so much on this, but I definitely noticed the volume of Rightmove, Zoopla, and Upsticks adverts that were hitting my screens over the Christmas and New Year period. How about yourself?
Yeah, do you know, I love the idea of the Boxing Day boost. I think anything that gets into people's minds to look at property more, I think is a genius campaign. So yeah, no, I love it. I think it's, when I was a Zoopla, it was definitely a thing. Definitely that we would see a significant spike on Boxing Day. There's two sides to it. One is like everybody's having such a great time, they're thinking, yeah, where can we move to? Where can we have more space and all that sort of stuff? Or they really, really, really hate each other, and actually everybody needs to move out, and that's why people are looking at Boxing Day secretly. But I prefer the more cheerful take on that. But yeah, no, I think it's definitely kind of starts the process into January, and then January becomes a big kind of deal as well. And then yeah, mortgage rates being cut only adds some further fuel to that fire. So yeah, I think it's good news and bodes well, I think, for the spring market. And yeah, really excited to see hopefully more and more of their competitors, HSBC's competitors, following suit. It's something that economist Roger Martin Fack, one of our favorite kind of economists, behavioral economist no less, he was talking about at the Relocation Agent Network conference back in the last year, wasn't he?
He was. Roger said so. It was the Relocation Agent Network Conference and Awards, middle of December, wasn't it now? So everyone got together, and Roger Meinfag was sort of the keynote at the end of the day, and he had a great charts about sort of UK house prices basically, and called out several points along that trajectory. I think it's from way back in the 90s to now, about where the house prices have grown and where they'd slumped, and sort of some of those turns of events. And one of the points he made was that the deregulation of the banks back in the 80s caused a massive surge, and obviously big growth until I guess 2008 when the sort of the crash happened. But he was saying that something very similar is brewing now, and sort of seeing HSBC opening up like this, as you say, if the other banks follow on and Roger's predictions come true, then it could be a very interesting year.
Really, really solid. Yeah, brilliant. All right. So our next story is about a potential sale of one of the big estate agent groups in the UK, Dexters. So rumours are abounding, if that is what they do, about the fact that on Sky News and elsewhere, that Dexters, London's biggest estate agency chain, are exploring a potential sale. So Oakley Capital acquired a majority stake in Dexters in 2021, and they reckon the valuation could be so 500 million to half billion to 600 million. So yeah, look, that would be huge, right? Presumably it would be somebody else from the private equity arena, I would imagine.
Going through a similar sort of chain of transactions to someone like Lohman Group, I think they're called now, Lohman Capital originally, who obviously had their LDC back in to start with. Although LDC was the first PE that came in for them, and then there's been, I think they're on to the third one now. So I think until someone decides to go for it and go for an IPO, it'll be changing hands between various private equity companies, won't it? Or the
Yeah,
expectation will be just, so I'd say just someone with a bigger war chest, or even sometimes these private equity houses have bigger war chests within the own group, don't they? So Oakley Capital selling it off to someone else, and right at the top you've got Silver Lake trying to get out of some of these things as well, haven't you?
yeah, you do. And we'll go on to Zoopla a bit later on. But yeah, no, I think it would be interesting, wouldn't it? If you imagine that, like, so Lohman decides to buy up Dexters. I mean, that would be like pretty intense. Or, I know it might be a little bit too rich for Foxtons and so on, but if they can get a PE backer behind them to acquire some more, then that could be very interesting for the London market as well. But yeah, the fact that these guys are talking about, sorry, it is being talked about in the studios of Sky News suggests that there is something behind it. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see where it lands. Yeah,
And
see where it lands.
it's a sign to show that no one sleeps over the Christmas and New Year period, because not only have we got those conversations about what's going on with these big acquisitive businesses, but actually within that same sort of arena, we've got rumours and news coming in that
Have we got an exclusive, Matt?
it's breaking news, I think is the best way of putting
Okay.
it. But we're recording this on Monday, 5th of January, and I'm led to believe that Lohman have already made one of the big acquisitions, actually the back end of last year, picking up a 12-branch agency over in Berkshire.
Are we allowed to say who those are?
We can say they're green and yellow and they're called Prospect. I think that's probably it. But Mark Towell has obviously done an amazing job running that company over the last decade or so, and obviously backed by Colin and James. It's a question, I guess, of some of these companies now is when rather than, or even more so rather than when, and if, but more a case of who.
Yeah.
Like whether it's going to be LRG or Dexters, or as you touched on beforehand, Foxton's coming in for someone like that, but actually see
Yeah.
Lohman. And I think Mark and that business will sit fantastically within the Lohman group, and especially with their huge lettings portfolio that they've built up over the time that certainly I've been working with Prospect on it.
Yeah. Amazing. What a time to be a broker of businesses. Atomic Consultancy. Amazing. Lucy Noonan does an incredible job there. So yeah, that's again breaking news. We think it's going to go out tomorrow in the main press when we will release this podcast at 7 a.m. as well. So yeah, huge news. Prospect being acquired by Lomond. So Lomond's still active. Obviously, there's been an occasional rumor of them themselves sort of being sort of snapped up elsewhere. So yeah, there's lots still going on, and still points to hugely hugely acquisitive and healthy transfer or trades in the market.
It's really interesting. Sorry, just on
Sure.
these companies are the private equity houses investing. It's almost that institutional rent book approach, isn't it? Like these huge rental portfolios that they're building up, and I think we touched on it before that Lohman have actually closed down some of the KFH branches because they're not doing as well on the letting side of things, or rather maybe they weren't as strong as they were on the sales front. So very much the rent books that are driving these, and LRG had a huge portfolio. I think that's in the region of 75,000 or so tenancies, and Lohman's up near a similar sort of figure, which is consolidating to the level that sort of the Countrywides and LSLs were on before.
Yeah, exactly right. Yes, it's funny, isn't it? Like they say, history rhymes, and now we've got 2 or 3 huge Goliaths that have acquired their way to significant scale. So yeah, again, lots happening in that to start our year off, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more as 2026 rolls through. Next up, our third property news this week is all about Romans rejoining Zoopla. So Romans left Zoopla, I think, a couple of years ago, and there was some relatively strong support for on the market. Obviously, recently at that point in time, 2024, early 2024, had been acquired by CoStar, and there was lots of talk of how CoStar was going to make a difference. But now, gently, they've come back. So all of the LRG businesses Romans particularly, have come back onto Zoopla, and it's almost like it's obviously a big boon for them. And congratulations to Zoopla. That's a big name to get back. But it's also a little bit of an indication that perhaps they didn't get what they were expecting from the likes of On the Market, right?
That's it. So it's January 2024 that LRG switched everyone over to On the Market. It wasn't necessarily because of the one other portal, because that got dropped way back in 2018, I think it was now. But very much, it's the one other portal might be one thing, but there's the cost of being on three portals at the same time. And Michael Cook was quoted, CEO of LRG, was quoted at the time saying that down to On the Market, significant financial backing following its acquisition by US property giant CoStar, which he said would see the On the Market brand flourish over the next couple of years. Actually, with so many of LRG's brands being central London, sort of Acorn, Stirling Ackroyd, Gibbs Gillespie and Portico, a lot of those actually around me here in Camberwell, they actually started listing again with Zoopla because, as you know, Zoopla is very strong in London, and I guess they must have seen success from those brands because they've now rolled it out across the rest of the group.
Yeah, amazing. I hope that the meetings with Romans were a lot less stressful than when I tried to get Romans on first time back in 2009 or something like that onto Zoopla, where I was just, I turned up in their Crowthorne big kind of head office and basically was monstered for about an hour and a half by a combination of Peter Coles and Ian White. So yeah, I'm hoping that they had a rather easier transition across in this particular conversation. But well done to Zoopla for getting Romans back. And yeah, it's an interesting kind of, how does that play out as we tuck further into the year between those two kind of challenger portals as well. All right, that is our property news for this week. We must hurry along to our AI and tech news. All right, Matt, we've kind of got a real soft spot for this particular business, this particular AI, and it's now been acquired by Meta. And this is Manus. So Manus AI is a really good, it's an agentic AI. Just to recap about agentic AI, this is AI that you give a task to, it goes off and works out how to do it and then comes back with an answer some minutes, hours in certain instances later. It can check in with you, it can ask you questions, you can take over the screen as you see it kind of working away. But Manus really hit the ground 2.5 years ago, something like that, and it was really the first one that was so easy to use and really friendly and really kind of understandable. And now Meta has gone, Mark Zuckerberg has gone and nabbed it. And yeah, that presumably is going to be where it goes to die. I'm sure Meta has got some big plans for it. It's a huge deal, right?
Well, it is for both sides, isn't it? Because in Manus, Meta's actually playing catch up to an extent of suddenly getting this, as you say, this agentic. It's not quite a wrapper, is it? Although it's much more of an application layer that you can give tasks to. And for me, for a long time, and I know I said it over the Christmas period on one of the podcasts, that my brother caught up on all the purged or binged all of the podcasts, and we mentioned Manus a lot, but I think it's because it was always at the forefront of what was being released. It was first to do slides, it was doing these amazing presentations, research came along very early on. It's now using Nano Banana Pro to create slides and presentations. So the things that you wanted to do where you could actually, as you say, hand off a task, go out for a coffee or your dinner, come back and your presentation for the next day was there ready to go. And for a while, it seemed to be that ChatGPT were actually using Manus as a way of knowing what features to add itself, because Manus had launched something and then a quarter later, ChatGPT would be adding something in as well. So whilst Meta have now acquired all of those features and functionality, what Manus gets is obviously the huge distribution that WhatsApp and the social media is doing. What I hope doesn't happen is that Manus, as we know it, disappears and it just becomes something that lives within your WhatsApp and your Instagram and your Facebook, etc. And what was quite interesting, obviously, way back when it started, it was alongside DeepSeek as being a Chinese business, Chinese startup, and they relocated to Singapore, didn't they, to move away from a bit of that China state side of things. So I think what will happen now is a lot of those Chinese entrepreneurs, startups will be thinking, well, actually, if one company can be acquired by these companies, then we can follow that sort of path and you see more of the knowledge and companies flowing out of that area.
Exactly. So yeah, the reported Wall Street Journal number is $2 billion. So yeah, that will be worth changing your postcode across the water. And so Meta does say that it's going to keep Manus running independently, but then they always say that, don't they? Although Meta, to be fair, does still run WhatsApp kind of separately and things like that, and Instagram. But yes, it's going to be folded into, the agents will be folded into working within Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp. So yeah, interesting times for that. And, having used Meta's AI, which is rubbish and really annoying, hopefully it's going to improve that as well. All right. Next up in our AI and tech news, we there's a new job going. If anybody wants to earn $555,000, then I would send an application into one Sam Altman, care of San Francisco, because he's looking for a new head of preparedness. Okay, so a head of preparedness will be directly responsible for defending against risks from ever more powerful AIs to human mental health, cybersecurity, and biological weapons. So, not much then. So, yeah, $555,000. Matt, you tempted?
I think I'm all right here.
No.
Yeah,
I think you'd be great at
yeah, well, I
defending.
absolutely would do. Anticipating and planning for catastrophic risks from advanced AI systems. It sounds like every time I speak to you, Mal.
You are the guy who has to handle this stuff on a semi-regular basis. So no, exactly. In the mental health stuff, that's really important. But yeah, I think it's interesting that Mustafa Suleyman, chief exec of Microsoft AI, the day before was telling people, I honestly think that if you're not a little bit afraid at this point, then you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. Thanks for that, mate. So yeah, there's a lot going around about sort of alignment, which is the phrase that people use, meaning making sure that AI is aligned with human needs, human wants, rather than going off and wending its merry way to take over the world. So yeah, there's going to be some interesting, I'm sure, applicants for that, and it will be interesting to see who gets it. But anybody out there who thinks that they should be the head of preparedness for OpenAI, then I'd apply quickly because I think it's going fast. All right, next up, AI and tech news. OpenAI is betting big on audio, and the kind of context of that is that Silicon Valley is declaring war on screens. So when we kind of look forwards into this year and the years beyond, you and I often talk about sort of devices and how are we going to be communicating with these things? Is it going to be still phone based, screen based? But very much it looks like Silicon Valley is targeting voice and audio, and that screens are in the end going to disappear, right?
That's it, and I think there's a large part of this is coming from the whole Johnny Ive sort of collaboration. I said collab then, I made my toes curl, but a collaboration that's coming with the acquisition of his business last year and the new wearable that's going to be the third object that you set down on desk when it's not going to be your Mac going forward, actually, is it, Mal? The breaking news is that you're going to be using Windows going forward. That's the way your business is going. So when you put down your Windows laptop and your Google phone, you'll have a third wearable that'll be listening to everything, right? And that's what Johnny Ive's working for. And I think this news, this bit of news is sort of showing or underlining that OpenAI is preparing preparedness, following on from previous stories about the AI needs to be ready to capture everything and not, as you've highlighted before, your various wearables that sometimes they pick up the wrong bit of the conversation. The AI models need to be ready to start translating some of that stuff without these screens.
Maybe I need a head of preparedness for the moment that I lose my MacBook and just kind of need to pay somebody for my own mental health at that point. But yes, there is a lot in terms of how we are going to be interacting with this technology. And again, for people out there, if you can imagine intelligence everywhere. All right, so it is literally like electricity. You won't even have to remember anything because you can just ask something. It might be something in your ear. It might be a pen. It might be Matt. You've got something that magnetizes to the back of your phone, haven't you?
I've got my Claude Note that I picked up over Christmas as a little gift to myself. So that's it in its carry case.
Yeah,
slim, like a business card. But it's, as I said to Tony from Complete ASAP, it's basically a posh dictaphone, a modern dictaphone. Yeah. And if you're into Partridge, that's got its own sketch around it. But they are very they're not obtrusive. They're not going to break into the scene and set down like a boulder to take over and make sure everyone's looking at like the squawk boxes you used to have in boardrooms. It sort of sits alongside you. And I think, as you say, there's some of these things. Meta have just rolled out a feature in their Ray-Ban smart glasses that has a 5 microphone array within it. So if you're in a really noisy room, you can turn your head towards the person who's speaking and it'll amplify that one person out of all the background noise. So these things that just help you deal with the world around you without you even realizing you are doing. And sort of the Claude Notes, come back to that, is very much for we have these AI agents that joins calls now, and they take the notes and create the actions, and you can then use those as your follow-ups. But then when you're doing a classic face-to-face conversation, there's a bit of a gap there, and all these sort of OpenAI betting big on this audio is to make sure that their models are ready for these new worlds that they're moving towards.
Yeah, exactly that. So yeah, it will be very, very different in a few years' time in terms of how we interact with this. So yeah, interesting to see that they are going very, very large on voice and audio. Next up on our AI and tech news, we've got all about Apple and its Siri. Okay, so regular listeners will know that we kind of chortle regularly about how useless Siri is compared to pretty much just about any other voice activated AI. But they're talking again that actually 2026 is going to be the year of the AI powered Siri. Okay, and that's going to be part of the launch this year. Now, again, it's whether we believe that to be true. We certainly don't think, or I certainly don't think, not speaking for you, I certainly don't think that it's going to be their own model. So they're going to plug something else in, aren't they?
Well, that's it, and they've already been brokering these deals, haven't they, with the likes of Google, and I think Anthropic was in the mix as well, and
Yeah,
some pretty big figures being bandied
complexity.
around for using the Google certainly was going to be a big deal, wasn't it, when they were talking about licensing Gemini to live within it. So I know they were testing it sort of Q4 of last year, and there was things coming on. So I don't think 2026 is that off the mark, given we've still got a whole 361 days to go to get something out the door. But it's just whether or not they can afford another damaging release like they've had before. And I'm sure they'll refrain from relabeling it Apple Intelligence for a little while in its marketing videos.
Exactly. It just happens to be at Apple's 50th anniversary this year as well. So they're going to need to do something big to justify the big cake. So yeah, let's hope for those of us that do still use Apple until the company gods take it away. Then yes, hopefully the Siri will be a marked improvement on what we've had so far.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you touched on in the last point about Mustafa Suleiman being on the Today Show and sort of saying if you're not scared, you don't understand it. At the same time, with Microsoft, while Apple are trying to get their Siri AI out the door, you got Satya Nadella diving into the actual product roadmap and sprint reviews because they're so worried about how Microsoft Copilot is going. So it's some of these. While Google is obviously flying, Microsoft and Apple is sort of still a bit shaken, aren't they?
Really interesting, yeah, because Copilot, I mean, I don't know if you use it, but I've tried it a couple of times just on Word and like PowerPoint and stuff like that, and it is absolutely atrocious. It doesn't know the first thing about what it's doing, what it's looking at, and it is, yeah, to all intents and purposes, frankly, useless as far as I'm concerned. So yes, I'm sure that will be the next thing that they
Was
need
it a
to
call from you
fix.
that got Nadella to roll up his sleeves and actually get stuck into sprint planning and make sure his bugs were being logged, right?
Pretty much, yeah, and also the call to Altman about the head of preparedness. So yeah, obviously, just trying to
Cracking you must be.
do my bit for humanity in general. All right, that is all we've got time for on our AI and tech news, and we have very little time, but just a tiny bit to dive into our tool of the week. All right, tool of the week this week. Google has been eyeballing what's been happening elsewhere in email fixes, and actually you and I, Matt, with the group that we're part of, the Leaders Inc. group, partnership group of suppliers, and we were talking about this just before Christmas. So your email inbox is now a fertile ground for AI to come and help you to improve your productivity. Ones like Fixer, Manus has been around helping out on it as well, but also now Google is testing an email-based productivity assistant. Now, it is probably true to say that if anybody can make a real success of this, it's Google, because they have had access to people's inboxes via Gmail for a long time. So they know what people are writing about. But yeah, this is a really, I think is just going to mean that this becomes so much more mainstream, so much more quickly. Have you used any of these, Matt?
I use Fixer, FXYER email, as we talked about at the Leaders Inc. the other month, and it's really powerful in terms of categorizing emails, filing certain emails away, and writing an initial draft. It's not always ideal, and I'd say it's much better on the email side of things than it is on the calendar, but that's probably because of my erratic setup rather than the application.
Probably because you trying to fit the podcast in, basically, when I just don't even tell you when it's happening.
That's it. Workman blames his tools and all the rest of it. I think, as you say, there's such a volume of knowledge in your emails as well, and it's ripe there. And one of the things you said on the podcasts over Christmas, that if people haven't picked up on them, they're still available on all the podcast streaming services and some of the bad ones too. But the wrappers, isn't it? These companies that are building on top of large language models, the large language models are losing such a huge volume of interaction that they're going to look to go into those areas and build even bigger switching barriers with the consumer at that application layer. And we've got obviously the roles that OpenAI employed last year around the app market and that focus. And you always expect Google to go there because Gmail is such a pivotal place within that workplace suite, isn't it? So it'll be interesting to see what it goes. I won't be moving over to Gmail just to get that working for me, but it seems like an obvious one, and one that maybe you'll see just before you swap everything over to Microsoft.
With any luck, yeah, exactly that. So yeah, I'll have a glimpse of what ideal looks like before I'm shuttered into Copilot version, which is absolutely terrible. Brilliant stuff. Listen, that is all we've got time for this week. Thank you so much indeed for listening into this first of many, well, 52. Unless there's emergency ones, property AI reports for the year 2026. Matt, great to catch up again.
Likewise, and you're not on the road this week, are you? That's next week.
Next week I begin the big tour, 60 locations, 60 days, etc. So yes, we will have to work out when we record this first of all.
And if you're listening to this and not booked in yet, then I'm sure they can find the details somewhere on your website, or just ask AI.
Indeed, yeah. So it's myporta, myporta.ai/tour26. But yes, I will see many of you hopefully live over the coming weeks and months. But yeah, till then, and until indeed next week when we record number 61 of our Property AI report. Have wonderful weeks. We'll speak to you soon. Cheers. Take care.
Everyone.